If you had asked me 3 days ago what love looked like, I would have pointed to the tiny bundle in my arms. Emily, my daughter, my miracle, my world, had come into this world with a cry so strong and fierce, it silenced the doubt I'd sometimes wrestled with about whether I could do this, whether I'd be a good mother, whether I'd get the support I needed from David and his family. But now, standing in my in-laws' overly pristine living room, holding her close to my chest, love suddenly felt conditional. "She's beautiful," Evelyn said, her smile taut and mechanical, like the string of a worn-out puppet. But I have to admit, I was surprised. Surprised? At what? That she had her father's lips? That she had a head full of dark curls and 10 perfect fingers? What do you mean? I asked, already sensing where this was going. Evelyn exchanged a glance with her husband, silent as ever, and then with David, who stood like a statue by the window. I had asked him earlier to stay by my side. Clearly, he forgot. "It's just that," she continued, her voice soft and falsely sweet, "in our family, we've only ever had boys. 4 generations. All boys. David's grandfather had 5 sons. David's father has 3 brothers. His uncles all had sons. And now." She gestured toward Emily, still swaddled in a pink fleece blanket. "I just want to be sure," she said plainly. "Sure of what?" I asked, though I knew. "That she's really, well, a Jameson." There it was. I looked at David, hoping he would snap out of his daze and speak up. But instead, he shifted uncomfortably and said nothing. My heart dropped. "You think I cheated?" I asked, my voice low but trembling. "Because I gave birth to a girl?" "It's not an accusation, Chloe," she replied, her hands clasped together. "It's just a precaution. Something to lay any doubts to rest. We want what's best for Emily, too. Don't you? Don't I?" Emily stirred slightly in my arms, and I instinctively swayed, cradling her head gently. My daughter. My flesh. My blood. And they were questioning her identity like she was a stranger who had wandered into their perfect little legacy. I felt humiliation, rage, and grief all at once, but above all, I felt clarity. They wanted proof. Fine. They'd get it and a little extra. David followed me to the car after that bizarre interrogation masked as a family visit. I was silent the entire walk down the driveway, Emily buckled into her car seat. I needed the physical distance, even if it was just a few feet, just a few moments, before the pressure in my chest made me explode. "Chloe, wait," he said as I opened the car door. "Can we just talk?" I turned slowly. "You had your chance to talk. Back there. When your mother accused me of cheating and implied our daughter wasn't yours. She didn't say it like that." "Oh, don't do that, David. Don't rewrite it into something softer." She questioned Emily's legitimacy based on what? Family folklore about boys? What is this, the Middle Ages? He ran a hand through his hair, looking like a man trapped in a problem he created but didn't want to solve. She just got nervous. She kept bringing it up, saying how strange it was. And I didn't want to escalate things. Escalate? You didn't want to upset your mother, so instead you let her accuse me of infidelity while I stood there holding your daughter. I didn't say I agreed with her. You didn't say anything at all, David. He flinched, and I saw it land. Good. Then he said the thing that finally broke me. "It's just a simple test. It won't change anything." I laughed bitterly. "You think this is about a test? This is about you believing, even for a second, that it was possible I wasn't loyal. That she wasn't yours." David lowered his gaze, silent again. That was his weapon, his silence. A defense masquerading as peacekeeping. "Fine," I said, voice flat now. "Let's do the test. I'll get it done. I'll even pay for it myself. But you should know something. You weren't the only one with doubts. I opened the driver's side door and got in, the air heavy with everything unspoken. That night, as I held Emily to my chest and rocked her to sleep, I whispered, "They want truth? They'll get more than they bargained for." Before I married David, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about the Jamesons. They were wealthy, well-spoken, deeply traditional, and carried a self-importance that hovered just below arrogance. But Evelyn? She was a mystery. A woman who carried herself with rehearsed elegance and always had a cutting comment hidden behind a compliment. The kind of woman who could offer you tea and make it sound like a threat. She never accepted me fully. I wasn't refined enough, not from the right kind of family. I worked hard, had a career, didn't need her son to support me, and that bothered her. She liked control. She liked legacy. And most of all, she liked being obeyed. Her obsession with male heirs had always bothered me, though I had laughed it off at the time. She would beam about how the Jamesons only produced strong boys. It came up at dinner parties, holidays, even at my baby shower. And now, it made sense. She believed boys meant power, control, continuation. Girls? Girls were deviations. Uncertainties. That night, when Emily was finally asleep, I opened an old box of family photos that Evelyn had gifted us shortly after the wedding. At the time, I had thought it was a sweet gesture. Now, I examined them like an investigator. One thing stood out, the lack of early baby photos of David. There were toddler pictures, but almost none of him as an infant. The ones that did exist looked off, like they were printed on different photo paper or labeled months apart incorrectly. I also noticed how Evelyn never referred to David's birth as when I gave birth, but always as when David came into our lives. It struck me then, maybe I wasn't the one hiding something. Maybe the truth wasn't about Emily's bloodline but David's. There's something haunting about a quiet lab room. The smell of antiseptic, the low hum of machines, the weight of unspoken intentions. I sat there, Emily gently cradled in my arms, while the technician explained the procedure. A simple swab inside her cheek. Just a few seconds. Nothing invasive. Nothing painful. Still, the idea that I had to prove her identity, it made my stomach churn. David sat across from me, still and uncomfortable, like he knew he shouldn't be there but didn't know how to back out. He hadn't apologized. Not sincerely. He just kept repeating how this would clear things up. And I let him think that. Let him sit in that false comfort. Let him believe I had submitted to his mother's doubts, to his own cowardice. What he didn't know was that, after we handed in Emily's swab and mine, I had waited until he left the room. I returned to the receptionist and asked for a second test, discreet, confidential, private. I told them I needed a maternal lineage DNA test. Not for me and Emily, but for Evelyn and David. I had brought a brush with Evelyn's hair from her last visit. She always touched up her hair after holding Emily, claiming babies make her frizzy. And from David, I had a disposable razor I quietly retrieved from our bathroom. "You sure about this?" the technician asked. "Positive," I replied. Because if they were going to question my daughter's blood, they better be ready to have their own questioned too. The days that followed felt like months. I went through the motions of motherhood, diaper changes, late-night feedings, lullabies. But my mind wasn't in the nursery. It was in that lab. David acted like nothing had happened. He kissed me good morning, helped with Emily now and then, and even told me he was proud of me for agreeing to the test. I wanted to slap him. Instead, I smiled and nodded and played the perfect wife. Evelyn, of course, sent texts daily. Just checking on the results. "Let me know if you hear anything. You must feel so relieved to be doing this, it'll settle everything. You're such a good mother for being so cooperative." Every message made my skin crawl. I didn't tell anyone about the second test. Not even my best friend, who would have immediately said I was doing the right thing, and possibly bought me a bottle of wine to celebrate. No, this had to be quiet. Steady. Like pulling out a splinter that's buried deep beneath the skin, you don't scream, you don't flinch. You extract it and watch the wound finally heal. I got the results on a Wednesday morning. 2 emails. 2 documents. The first one confirmed what I already knew: Emily was David's daughter. 99.99% match. No doubt. No question. The second one made my heart stop. David was not Evelyn's biological son. The words were clinical, the percentages exact. No margin of error. No biological relationship. I read it twice. Then a third time. Then once more, just to let it sink in. Evelyn Jameson, the woman who humiliated me, accused me, questioned my fidelity, had a secret buried so deep even her son didn't know the truth. And now? Now, it was time for truth to come knocking. I planned it carefully. It had to happen at their house, just like they planned their ambush at mine. It had to be intimate, direct, with no chance for Evelyn to play victim or twist the story. I told David we were visiting his parents to discuss the results. He looked relieved. Probably thought this would end in some kind of group hug and validation for their toxic paranoia. We arrived in the late afternoon. Emily was asleep in her carrier, blissfully unaware that her very existence had sparked a storm of suspicion and now, a reckoning. Evelyn greeted us with that same tight smile. She looked smug, expectant. "I made tea," she said as we walked in. "Thought we could chat like adults." "Perfect. Let's." We sat in the living room. Her husband sat silently to the side as always, like an ornamental piece of furniture. David reached for my hand, and for once, I didn't pull away. I wanted him to feel safe, for now. "I got the results," I said calmly. "Wonderful," Evelyn said, hands folded on her lap like a smug queen. "And? Everything as expected?" "Absolutely," I said, pulling out the envelope. "Emily is David's daughter." No doubt. 99.99% match. No questions, right? She clapped her hands once, triumphant. "Oh, I'm so glad we cleared that up." I knew it, of course. Just had to be sure. "Right," I said, pausing. "Which brings me to something else." I pulled out the second envelope and laid it gently on the table. I looked at David. "I didn't tell you about this one because I needed to be sure. Because after being accused, after hearing how important bloodlines are to your family, I started wondering." I turned to Evelyn. "Who exactly is part of this legacy you're so proud of?" Evelyn blinked. Her smile faltered. David looked between us. "Chloe, what is that?" "This," I said, sliding the document forward, "is a maternity DNA test. Between you and your mother." The silence was instant. Heavy. Almost sacred. Evelyn's hands trembled ever so slightly. David reached for the envelope, confused. As he read, I watched the blood drain from his face. He looked up slowly, his voice cracking. This says. She's not. No biological match," I said softly. "You're not her son, David. At least, not by blood." Evelyn stood up suddenly. "That's ridiculous. That's impossible. I gave birth to him. I raised him, no one's disputing that you raised him," I said coldly. "But you made bloodline the hill you wanted to die on. So I gave you a hill." David sat down again, the page still shaking in his hands. "I don't understand," he murmured. "What does this mean?" "It means," I said, my voice like ice, "that everything she used to judge me was a lie. Her whole obsession with boys only and pure Jameson blood, it was built on a foundation of secrets. She questioned my loyalty. But her whole life is a performance." Evelyn was pale now. Silent. Her husband looked away, as if he'd known, or at least suspected. You demanded truth, I said to her, and now you have it. And you have no face to show. You know what I remember most about that moment? The silence. Not the chaos. Not the screaming. Not the unraveling of carefully fabricated stories. But the silence that followed my words. David sat frozen, his hand gripping that test result like it might change if he stared long enough. Evelyn's eyes darted between us all, her lips parted but saying nothing. Not even her husband, usually so detached he could be mistaken for a ghost, looked at her. No one moved. No one defended her. And that, I think, was the loudest judgment she could receive. I did what I had to do, Evelyn finally whispered, her voice dry like old paper. He's still my son. Blood or not, he's mine. Then why didn't you ever tell him? I asked sharply. If blood doesn't matter, why did you demand a test for Emily? Why accuse me? Why shame me in my own home? Her gaze snapped to mine. Because you were different. You never fit into this family. I saw how you talked back, how you made decisions without consulting David. I thought maybe I was cheating. I finished. Because I had a spine? She said nothing. I turned to David. Did you know? Did you ever suspect? He shook his head slowly. No. Never. My birth certificate has her name on it. My whole life. It was just us. I never thought to question it. You never thought to question me either, I said, letting that land. David didn't reply. I gathered Emily's carrier, checked to make sure she was still asleep, and stood. This was never about tradition, I said. This was about control. You wanted to humiliate me. You wanted to remind me that this wasn't my family. I paused, looking her dead in the eyes. Well, it turns out, this family doesn't even belong to you. And with that, I walked out. David didn't follow. It's funny, the kind of peace that follows a storm. Not quiet. Not calm. But clarity. Clean air. The sharp edges of truth no longer hidden in fog. After that day, everything changed. David stayed with his parents for a few nights, trying to process the news. Evelyn, apparently, denied it at first. Then said it was a technical error. Then finally admitted she had adopted him as a baby but had never thought it mattered. But it mattered when she accused me. It mattered when she demanded proof of my fidelity. It mattered enough for her to tear my motherhood apart. So, no, I didn't forgive her. David eventually came home. He was broken, confused, hollow. He said he felt like he didn't know who he was anymore. I'm sorry, he told me one night. For everything. For believing her. For doubting you. I looked at him, and for the first time, I saw him as just a man, not the boy his mother raised, not the partner I thought I knew. Just a man trying to understand the cracks in his foundation. I needed you to stand beside me, I said. You stood behind her instead. He nodded, tears brimming in his eyes. I know. We didn't fight that night. We didn't make love. We just sat in silence, holding our daughter between us like the only pure truth we had left. Weeks passed. Evelyn tried to call. I blocked her. She sent letters. I didn't open them. She even tried to come by once, but I didn't let her past the gate. She lost her control. She lost her face. And now, she had to live with it. David slowly earned his way back into our lives. He went to therapy. We went to couples counseling. Trust isn't something that regrows overnight. It's something you rebuild with scars still showing. But I'm not ashamed of the scars. Because they remind me that I didn't break. I stood up. I fought back. And I protected my daughter's dignity in a way Evelyn never protected her son's. One day, when Emily is older, she'll ask me why her grandmother isn't in our lives. And I'll tell her. Not all the graphic details, but enough for her to know that people who love you don't question your worth just because you don't fit their mold. That biology doesn't excuse cruelty. That standing up for yourself isn't disrespect, it's self-respect. I'll tell her how brave she made me. How her birth exposed every rotten crack in the lies surrounding us and how we walked away cleaner, freer, stronger. She'll know she is enough, just as she is. A girl born into a legacy that tried to reject her and rewrote it instead.